I'm going to polish the frets. And what I noticed as I was playing it a little bit was that even though the frets feel smooth, you can tell that there's a couple of, I don't want to say rough spots, but maybe a little scratchy. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape off the neck, as you see here, and I'll tape it all the way down to right in front of the front pickup here, and then I'll cover the pickups. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to steel wool using 0000 steel wool. That's finishing, buffing out and polishing to polish them up. And then I will finish that up with scratch out. And for those who are playing guitar, just so you know, this stuff, Kit makes it, is amazing stuff. It's supposed to be for cars, to take out light scratches, but if you have any kind of finishing issues on your guitar, and I'm talking about if you have laminate or veneer, do not put it on like a spruce top. That would not be a good thing. But if you have a typical electric guitar and you have veneer or a laminated surface, then this stuff works great. Now, it also works fabulously on buffing out and polishing your frets. Okay, so I'll be back in a little bit. I'm just going to finish up taping, and then we'll finish up the video here. Okay, so now I have the whole neck taped off all the way down. And this takes time because when you get to closer to the body, then what happens, you can see that the frets get narrower. The distance between the frets is more narrow. So what that means is you actually have to take the blue tape, this is painter's tape by the way, and you have to, start trimming it so that it fits inside the frets properly. Okay, so, but, it looks like this. This is what you want to do. And the reason why you're doing this is because you're protecting the fretboard. You do not want to be doing this work and expose the fretboard. You will damage it. Now, the other thing you should do is you can see that I taped off the body also. And the reason why I did this is because we're going to be using steel wool. And since the pickups are magnetic, the steel wool will stick to the pickups. And then you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get that steel wool off the pickups because there's no way to turn the magnets off. All right, so I just took an old rag and then taped it off here so that it's protected. All right, so I'm going to go get the steel wool now, and I'll start the process, and I'll intermittently show you how things are going along. Okay, so this is the steel wool we're going to use, and you can see here 0000. And if you take a look at the back of the package, it says superfine final finish. Okay, so I bet a lot of people didn't even know we have different grades of steel wool. So I'm going to be using this piece of steel wool. I've already used it once before. You'll get a lot of use out of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub it against each one of the frets. And I also suggest when you do this work that you wear a glove, okay, just to protect your hands. And so I'll get started with this, and when I finish up, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I finished rubbing the steel wool on the frets, and the way you do that is you just take the steel wool and apply your two fingers here and push down the fret. It's not going to cut into the fret because this is very, very, very fine steel wool. So this is going to be polishing and finishing. And what I noticed was I did have a couple of minor type of, I want to say hairline kind of lines of scratches in some of the frets, and this took it right out, so it looks really good. And I don't know if you can tell, but the frets really light up now. They're really shined up, and we're not even done yet. We still have to do the polish with the scratch out. Okay. Now the other thing that you have to know when you use steel wool is it could be messy. So like if you see here, these are all steel wool particles down here. All right. So the first thing you have to do before you start putting polish on is to get your vacuum cleaner and just vacuum up the stray steel wool fibers, and then you're ready to put the polish on. So let me do that. Let me vacuum, and then I'll start putting the polish on, and I'll take you through that. Okay, so the vacuuming is done, and you can see I got all of the fibers up from the steel wool. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the scratch out, And what you'll need to do this is that you'll need some kind of applicator. You can use a rag if you'd like, but I think the applicators work a little better, a little easier on the fingers. And so what I'm going to do now is put the scratch out, rub it into each one of the frets, and I'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like, especially after we buff it out. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, so the magic of video editing. So I am halfway up the fretboard. I just want to show you guys something. As I put the scratch out onto the pad, you can see the black on the pad. That black is what is being lifted up off of the frets. Okay, so when you do this and you see that, no need to worry. You'll see some of the light blue on here. That is from the tape, but you can also see why it's very important that you tape off your fretboard. Okay, so let me finish up putting the scratch out on, and then we'll get to the buffing process. Okay, so I'm done putting the scratch out, and you can take a look down the fretboard. I haven't wiped the scratch out off yet. What I'll do is I'll take a rag and buff it out, and then I will use a buffer to really smooth it out and gloss it up. But take a look at the pad. Okay, that came from the frets. This was a white pad. It looked like this when I started. Now it looks like this. Okay, so and this is something that everybody should do on their guitar. Next time you change your strings, take the time out. It'll take you about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Tape it off, and then do a fret polish. And I'm going to tell you that you will notice a big difference when you play. The frets will be smooth. The strings, especially if you do a lot of bending, the strings will bend easier, and it's just a good deal all around. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe off the scratch out, and then I'll get to the buffing. So stick with me. Okay, so I used an old sock, and you can see that I was still getting black residue off of the frets. But you can also see now how nice, shiny, bright they look. And if you feel them, they feel great, okay? But we're not done. So what I'm going to do is, the way I do this is I have a drill with a buffing head like this, and I just apply it to each fret, go down, and that's what I do all the way down the fretboard. So let me do that, I'll come back, and once I finish it up, I will take the tape off and we'll take a look at how good the neck looks. Okay, so the tape has been removed, and you can see it looks really nice, really nice. Now, there's two more steps to this, and they're easy. Number one is go get yourself an old toothbrush, and the reason why is because sometimes the polish, the scratch out in what I use in my example, will get between the very bottom of the base of the fret and the fretboard. So what you want to do is take, I'll get in the picture here. Take that toothbrush and just get whatever residual polish you have away from the base of the fret, just to clean it up. It's not going to damage the fret, but to clean it up and make it look nice, and that's all you've got to do. So I'll finish up doing that, and then once I do that, then I'm going to put on Music Nomad. This is probably one of the best spray-on polishers that I've come across in decades. So I'll be putting that on the fretboard also, just to put the final touches, and then I will restring the guitar and we will be done. Okay, so stick with me, be right back. Okay, so the Nomad guitar polish has been applied to the fretboard. Now let me just make sure I make this clear that what I don't do is I do not spray the polish directly onto the fretboard. What I do is I spray it onto the rag, and then I wipe down and rub in the polish. You really should never put a lot of polish or liquid types of cleaners on your fretboard. Okay, so you really don't want to do that. It's sufficient to just put it on a rag and then wipe it in. But you can see how nice it looks now. I mean, it's all cleaned up. The fretboard and the frets are just standing out now. So let me restring it, and we'll get to the end of the finish line here. Thanks, guys. Okay, so we have the whole guitar restrung, and it's looking really good, really good. Now, one of the things I want to recommend is these are locking tuners. So it makes restringing guitars very, very easy. So if you have to do some work and you don't want to put new strings on your guitar, if you have locking tuners, I mean, it makes the whole restringing process very, very easy and very quick. So this is the only guitar I have them on, by the way, and I'm very, very impressed by them. So now the last thing I'm going to do is, and a lot of guitar players never do this, never do it, and they should do it. You should always put a lubricant on the nut and also on the saddles, on the bridge. And by doing that, what will happen is you will significantly improve your tuning. Because what happens is when you do not lube the nut or the saddles, there's the string has friction inside the slots, both on the nut and both back at the saddle. So when you put the lube in the slots, it helps tremendously. Okay, so that wraps up this video, and hope you enjoyed it and you got something out of it. And if you have any questions, send me an email.